Just triple check, make sure it's recording. Recording to the cloud. Okay, we're good to go. I've never had that mistake, thank God. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Machtails from the Cantina. Tyler Page made a pledge to co-host the show. He's not only a Kickstarter backer, he has become a good friend of mine in a very, very, very short period of time. Thank you for your contribution, and thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm just glad to support, I'm glad that you're doing this. It's something to keep me busy during COVID. And
I always watch Rays over Cubs, but oddly enough, I'm wearing my Cubs gear today. You got your socks, hat on.
Yeah, so, I got a jersey too, man. It's the old 80s.
Now that's the jersey that I grew up on. What was your introduction to the White Sox?
I spent like 10 years growing up in Crete, Illinois, which is a south suburb, and then I moved to the north side for like middle school, high school. So I was the only Sox fan up there. So I've been dealing with Cubs fans my whole life. My dad he's not a big sports guy, but my mom and her dad they're big Sox fans. So that's sort of how I got into it.
My grandfather had an asphalt business for many years. Relatively on the smaller side, but definitely paid the bills and then some. My grandpa was both the Cubs and the Sox fan. He paved the old Comiskey Park. That was his account.
Like the parking lot?
Yeah, and then he was paving the neighborhood that Tony La Russa was living in during '83, and my grandpa had that because it was a brand new subdivision, and it was like my grandpa's kind of dream come true, I guess. That was probably his fanboy moment, was getting to pave the old Comiskey, and then also paving and then meeting La Russa and his driveway. As a Cubs fan, I can't hate the White Sox because my blood is from both,
Yeah, I know a couple people like you.
God, people go, oh yeah, remember baseball when you were a kid? Yeah, I remember baseball when I was a kid, but I didn't really become this hardcore baseball fan until 2008.
Yeah, that's fair. It was easy for me because I was 10 when the Sox won the series. So I've got all the memories of staying up till 2 a.m.
Two outs to go.
6 strikes.
It's gonna happen?
Gonna happen.
Come on, Cubbies! Game 7, World Series, 1 out to go. Why are you crying?
Because it's been a long time. It's been a long time.
Me and you had met at a RFR party, Celebration Chicago. We've been friends since, and our friendship has grown over Star Wars, but we find out that a lot of people that we have Star Wars in common with, we're like an onion, right? There's the layers of baseball, there's the layers of music, there's the layers of, where you grew up, how you grew up, all these other things that kind of spawn off of the introduction of Star Wars.
There's a certain Star Wars Chicago community, and it's not super big, it's not super small. I don't know, hanging out with you and Brian and the Babu freaks, it's just been a blessing,
First of all, let's rewind. What are you drinking tonight, man?
So this is just a margarita, but I spiced it up with some Red Bull.
Okay.
So it's been a long day, and I need to wake up for this. So
I'm drinking an old fashioned. I've drank old fashioned several times on the show. It's usually like Energy City, Bullet Old Fashioned, or Mark West wine. I have wine on backup after this drink is gone. But yeah, going back to the Chicago connection, right? Jimmy's based out of Chicago, and he's kind of like the grandpa that kind of brings this all together. Jimmy is involved in a very, very big, important podcast, Rebel Force Radio, that is based out of Chicago. And the funny thing is, Chicago is such a big city, but I feel like the people that are cut from the same cloth, the hardcore Star Wars fans, not the real Star Wars fans. I don't want to use that word, real, but the hardcore Star Wars fans, like me, you, Barry, Brian, so on and so forth. I don't feel like there's as much of those because in Chicago, it is a big city, but if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, you can't argue the fact you should know about Rebel Force Radio.
Yeah.
You should know about the ancient movie The Force Among Us by this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So, Jimmy still gets new listeners. I still get new fans. But it's kind of cool that we're growing in Chicago, and you're not really late to the party because I feel like there wasn't really this strong Chicago presence 15 years ago.
My Star Wars fandom has peaked, and it's had its valleys and its peaks. Since Force Awakens, it's been, a steady climb up, and that's when I actually started listening to Rebel Force Radio. And I didn't have the opportunity to really get out and hang with people until right around Celebration.
Right before COVID kind of.
Yeah. There's a good amount of people, at least in the RFR community, who they might live in Chicago or live in the suburbs, and they see us and we're saying, hey, we're going to hang back in the day before COVID. And they might be a little intimidated, or just scared, a little like, I don't know what I'm going to get into if I go there. I was the same way. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I just showed up to an arcade and started hanging out with guys. And I met, some really close people. So
now, would you say you're an introvert or an extrovert?
Around things I'm passionate in, I can be really extroverted. And I have a couple different sides of myself. In my job, I'm probably an extrovert. But outside of that, I'd rather listen to other people. I'd rather hear other people's opinions and ask a question that really means a lot to them. I'm more introverted personally, probably.
I know you can help us break the stereotypes a little bit here. Now, you have a real job. You are an accountant, yes?
Yeah, if you want to call that a real job. It pays the bills, but morally, I'm always striving in my personal life to fulfill this other stuff that I just want to do. And I think that's a lot of accountants.
For the accountants that I know and that I've hired in the past, I wouldn't pin you as an accountant because usually the ones that I know are very, very odd and very quirky, and I don't
Yeah, that's fair.
Going back to, Rebel Force Radio and the Chicago connection, it just shows that Star Wars again and again is very community driven. It doesn't have to be this big thing that we share with a million people, even though, so many people love Star Wars. But when you have these one-on-ones with people and these hangs with 5 people, mm-hmm. It's more like just getting together with friends, having a couple beers in the chat,
I don't think I'll ever forget that Christmas party that you had. And that's just a normal Christmas party for you. That was like steeped. This is everything I wanted out of a Christmas party. It's so much Star Wars shit.
I don't even know if there's going to be a Christmas party this year, which is crazy, but I don't even know what's going to happen next week at this point. My daughter just started first grade. I hope it keeps going because she loves it and I cannot be her Yoda. I can't do it.
So certain are you? Always with you, it cannot be done.
You were not born when the first Star Wars movie came out. What was your introduction to Star Wars?
So I was born in 95. So I was 4 years old when Phantom Menace came out. My Star Wars fandom as a kid was really peaked because I had 4 older sisters and one of them was dating a really, hardcore Star Wars fan. If I was getting a toy for my birthday, that dude was giving me a Star Wars toy and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And he just fueled that fandom in me. And, I remember coming out of Attack of the Clones and being so psyched. Like everyone hates that movie and it's not my favorite to watch, but like I have certain memories attached to it. just because it's the first one I really remember, you know, and.
Yeah, it's kind of like your Empire Strikes Back for me. It's like I was 5 when Empire came out, and that must grate on your nerves when you hear people hate Attack of the Clones.
I get it, because it's not like super exciting movie, but like the last hour is just, for me, the last hour as a kid, I was like, holy, you know, I didn't even know what the Slave One was. I just saw a cool ship. You know, I wasn't young enough to be connecting the dots as I am now and, you know, later on in life. I just saw cool stuff and absorbed it. You know, I think we all go through that if you consume Star Wars as a kid. It was just raw consumption, you know. I don't care what anyone else thinks. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, what this generation now, who's watching the sequel trilogy, what they think.
Everybody's introduced to Star Wars differently. And I think that age that you're introduced to Star Wars really opens up the floodgates. It sounds like you did 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, is it safe to say?
I did, because I remember my friend telling me, like, I just remember him being like, oh yeah, Anakin, you know, he's gonna become Vader in the next one. And I was like, what are you talking about, bro? and I was like, he's gonna be him. And we were like, he had the special editions. So I was just like, I wasn't putting anything together. Everyone else knew, right? I didn't. So it was, you know, after I watched 1, 2, 3, I went back and watched 4, 5, 6, and, you know, fell in love all over again as a kid. But then I hit my high school years, sports and girls came around, and then
it was nostalgic to you.
Yeah, I remember getting a 3PO figure for my birthday when I was like 20 or something, and I was like, oh, and that was like, here we go again. It was definitely a really good revival. So,
what would you say your favorite Star Wars movie is? And what is your least favorite?
Oh, my favorite's Empire. People can rank them 1 to 9, but they're all Star Wars movies. So for me, they're all in my top 50 movies of all time. Last Jedi is going to be 9, but it's just, it has, maybe in 5 years, maybe in, you know, 5 hours, it's going to change.
I was blown away by the fact, and I was honored to be part of your experience, but we had the opportunity to not see one Star Wars movie at the drive-in. Well, 3, technically, counting my driveway for 1.
Yeah.
When we saw Empire Strikes Back at the Marcus down the street from me, you said that was the first time you saw it on the big screen.
Yeah, I haven't gone to any of the marathons.
So hopefully the drive-in experience continues. It'd be cool to see them all, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to see a prequel, you know, in the movie drive-ins, even Return of the Jedi, because I haven't seen that yet on the big screen either.
What else would you say you're passionate about other than Star Wars and baseball?
I mean, music is up there, but I'm not as hardcore as you guys, to be honest. You know, I don't routinely play instruments, and I listen to different music. I went to pop punk shows a lot in high school. Fugazi was the very early, you know, punk label, like, band that everyone sort of idolized. And then sort of meshed into Blink, became pop punky, and I know there's like probably a million bands out there that sort of get lumped into that category, but that's what I really, you know, I got really into that in high school. I live, you know, 15 minutes away from a lot of venues, so I like going to small shows. I'll take any live music.
Well, we were supposed to go to 2 shows together. We were supposed to go to the Rush tribute that Primus was doing in Rage Against the Machine. Are those the only 2 shows you've missed this summer, or have you missed quite a bit?
Oh, I missed more than that for sure. Brian and I were gonna go see Oysterhead in April.
Yeah.
And then I missed the Wonder Years, which is a pop punk band, and then Reagan Youth. They were a band in like the early 80s, very political band.
But I was introduced to a lot of those punk rock bands back in the day, but I always chose thrash metal. I always wanted that heavy crunching sound of the E strings, you know.
I listened to bands at one point in my life, like Suicide Silence, and like just very screamo or scream metal, whatever you want to call it, bands. Were you doing that kind of stuff? Were you like, you know, just breaking your vocal cords, or was it because like,
you know, I was doing stuff like one of the bands that I still appreciate today. They're based out of Tampa, Florida. A band called Obituary. were like the only death metal band that just kept going. And they weren't like dark, twisted, crazy, satanic band like Deicide or Cannibal Corpse was.
Yeah.
I think that's why I got into them. There was no message. It was more of just a sound, you know?
Yeah.
But it was just like this growling. It was like this. I don't even want to do it now because I'll fuck up my voice for the next week.
Yeah, it's just deep.
Yeah, just deep growling stuff. I do have some recordings of that stuff. You know what? Actually, let's take a listen to that right now.
Yeah, do it. I love it.
You know, I don't know if that necessarily destroyed me for life. I know I have allergies and all the other bullshit that, you know, just, you know, common to man. But it didn't help. It didn't help for sure. You know, I had a guitar player that was amazing. He was always like, just get to the bowels of your gut. He wanted me to get so low and so gravelly. He once told me to gargle with glass. And I'm like, you're fucking insane, man. He was joking, but he was so... And I was really into Star Wars at the time. I know you said when you were in high school, you got out of Star Wars a little bit. When Jimmy was in high school, he kind of drifted from Star Wars a little bit. When I was in high school, I kind of rediscovered Star Wars. I actually named one of my death metal bands after the Dark Horse comic. Dark Empire was the name of my band. I'm like, this is taken right from the comic book.
That's awesome.
And everyone's like, oh, that Dark Empire, is that Satan's, you know, lair, you know? Oh, the Star Wars thing, you know?
Yeah.
You know, when I asked you to co-host the show, and you said, you know what, I want to bring on the Babu Freaks. You wanted to bring on Barry. You wanted to bring on Brian. They have not been on the show. They're coming on tonight. Can you give me just a little bit of a backstory on the Babu Freaks, like the origin of it?
It's really the product of Jimmy's brain. Jimmy, Brian, Barry, and me, we're consistently, you know, just meeting up. And certainly most of the RFR Patreon community, they're all in their own right Babu Freaks.
Marijuana! A lot of freaks.
Barry's joining us. We're going to bring the Babu Freaks on one at a time here. And for the people that don't like episode 9, it's kind of, you know, if you listen to the Freaks, you might have new appreciation for episode 9.
Yeah, and I mean everyone likes Babu Frick. If you hate episode 9, you still like Babu Frick.
He's the silver lining in the movie for some that, you know, that need the silver lining.
For me, the sequel trilogy sort of felt like it didn't have a good setup. I don't know. It's a big ask, but I just don't know if they had the consistency and lined it all up correctly, because, you know, combating minds and views and stuff, and then, you know, before you know it, you're at the end of the trilogy.
Hey, look who's here, the Bad Batch.
A lot of freaks.
I think the one thing for me is that 7, 8, and 9 were talked about from George years ago. And then we went through this really, really long period of George going, no, 1, 2, and 3, that's it, I'm done. So in my mind, I was like, okay, he's done. He teased it years ago. He's folded it, and then all of a sudden, Disney buys it, and bam, here's all the movies. And I'm like, whoa, I had no idea. For years, I thought about 7, 8, 9 under George. But then when he started making the prequels and he said, I'm not doing that, I kind of wrote it off going, you know what, it's wishful thinking. I know Rick McCallum always joked, like, the way George is spending money, he's got to make 7, 8, and 9.
Feels like Rise of Skywalker is doing so much heavy lifting in terms of like payoff. And you're like, you look back and you're like, I mean, I guess I could see how Finn was force sensitive, but they didn't really lay the groundwork for it that much. They just need to do like little things to make it just like a lot better for me. Like all the ships appearing. And I would have loved just a little bit of a roll call.
All wings, check in. Red 3, standing by. Red 6, standing by.
Red 5, standing by.
Red button, standing by. Red Fox, standing by. Big Red, standing by.
Red October, standing by.
Helen Reddy, standing by.
Simply Red, standing by.
You know, it would have been, I mean, it would have been fan servicey, but it also would have been more than just Wedge. Like, I love Wedge, but it did seem kind of weird where it's like, Lando's here and Wedge is here. And that's it. All right, let's get going. My personal issue with J.J. Abrams is that he seems afraid to do things that he doesn't like. And I think some other people telling stories in Star Wars right now, they know when to step back and be like, all right, I may not like Gungans, I may not like Episode 1, but I understand it's important and integral, and it might be a smart move just to put a little nod to Episode 1 in there, put a little nod to like the original trilogy in there. If George made the movie, or if someone like Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau, they'd be like, let's cut around and just show some establishing scenes of Babu's place before they arrive, so you can, have, like in Jabba's palace, they would show everyone just sleeping before Luke entered. And I feel like they could have done that with Babu, where you'd hear some tinkering and you'd hear him like going, and like you see some shadows and you see these droid parts and you're like, oh, something's going on here. And then they start the scene, rather than just being like, hey, Babu, how you doing? Oh, hey, doing well. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you order something, you're like, we're going to be sitting here for a while. And then a minute later, your dinner comes out and you're like a little suspect. You're like, how did this happen so quickly? Mm-hmm. Was this cooked before? Is this pre-cooked? Did you microwave this? Was this someone else's? In my mind, I was like, all right, Disney's going to take a while because they're going to have to get all their ducks in a row. They're going to have to look at George's materials. And then they're like, no, we're making a new movie. Episode 7's coming, what was it, in 2 years? And I was like, holy crap.
I did get some really, really cool questions that I want to share with you guys. I can answer these on my own, but I would love to hear from you guys as well. My good friend, John Laurie from Scotland. John works in the film business. He's been a good friend of mine and supporter for a long time. He asks the show, what was your first Star Wars toy, and do you still have it? My first Star Wars toy, unfortunately, was the red Snaggletooth, and I was so disappointed. And I don't have anything really from my childhood except for some old Return of the Jedi sheets and some of the case inserts from the vinyl cases. That was all. Everything in my collection I kind of recollected in the early 90s and on. How about you guys? What was your first Star Wars toy, and do you still have it?
I do. My first Star Wars toy was when we finally got the early bird stuff.
Star Wars figures. R2-D2. Chewbacca, Luke, and Princess Leia. They're the Star Wars early bird set of figures.
I was one of those guys that got the certificate for Christmas of '77, and then we got the toys in like April, I think. I don't remember. I was 4 years old at the time.
And you still have all those?
I can't really differentiate because I was one of those kids that when we had the toys, we would play with them until they were worn down and lost the sabers and did all this.
Do you have anything carded from that first line?
No. I mean,
a 5-year-old isn't going to save his carded action figures.
I have a box, a big cardboard box that has most of the card. I kept the card backs because they were cool. I mean, I still have all. I never sold any of my original stuff because it's probably not worth as much as it is to me because most of it's just worn down to hell.
Brian, what are you drinking tonight?
You ever hear of this brewery called Energy City?
All the time.
I'm drinking the mango blackberry bistro magnifico smoothie.
Well, I've got a couple things going on here. So we were with some friends earlier, so I had a couple beers. So I'm having water, Topo Chico, but then I have a Modelo here too. So I've got a couple bottles going on.
This is one of the figures I have right off screen here.
That's the one that I got.
But then he's sitting right next to his brother. Blue Snaggletooth.
You know what? When I was a kid, here, show that red Snaggletooth, any Snaggletooth. Okay, that thing on the belt. When I was a kid, I always thought it was a bird.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's in the shape of like an eagle. You know, it's got wings.
It's like a bird or an angel.
Do you know what that is?
Are you an angel?
It is a belt buckle.
Yeah, but I mean,
I have no idea. I don't think they've ever gone that. I don't think they've ever gone that far into the lore. And this probably is. I don't even know if they showed the Snaggletooth full body anyway.
Wow.
That's probably something that someone at Kenner designed and said, "Oh, that looks cool." And 44 years later, someone's talking about it on a.
See, they talk about the yellow saber on Rebel Force Radio, but on Machtails we talk about the eagle-shaped belt on the red snaggle too.
Oh, we go deep in the weeds, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a Naboo fighter, like the actual, jet.
Climb into the electronic Naboo fighter.
I have a ton of memories like playing with it and stuff, but the one that like sticks out is me just fucking stepping on the tail.
Oh.
Like that I stepped on the tail so many times and it hurt so bad. It was, there's all the memes about Legos. That was my Lego growing up.
The Naboo fighter candy dispenser, the tail is very soft, but apparently not on the action figure size Naboo fighter.
Nah, I got bad memories.
In my case, I was born in '84, so I had the VHS tapes at a very young age. 1987, 1988, I was old enough to start wanting to have things, and I'm guessing all there really was like the storybooks that were like used and in terrible condition, because I have those on my shelf. I don't know when I got them, but I've had them for a long time. As far as toys, though, I feel like I probably started getting stuff in '95, and that was with the Power of the Force 2.
The Star Wars Power of the Force collection.
Even at the time as a kid, I knew something was funky about them. But really the big one is the Action Fleet line. I'm a big fan of those. I have them behind me here. I have all the X-Wings lined up there. In this room, I have all the Rebel stuff up here. You can't see it. And then I have all the Imperial stuff up there. And then I have a little shelf up here of the Hoth stuff. I like ships, but it's very hard to, as Brian would know, to collect ships for action figures because they're huge. And if you're like a completionist, like no way. That's not a way to live.
Now, Tyler, I know you have a collection, but I look at Barry's background. I look where Brian's at. I have a little bit of a background on why you don't see any collection behind me, but Tyler, how come your wall is blank? You don't even have a poster on that fucking wall.
My room's a mess.
Oh boy, this is new.
So
it's like inside the actor's studio here. Look
yeah,
at
that's the only thing I have from my childhood. That's my pillowcase. Yeah.
It's like Maz's castle.
But I got, that's like most of my three.
Oh, look at that.
Well, I've got a ton of stuff just sitting on the bed because I need to buy displays.
What do you sleep?
I got posters and all sorts of crap. I don't, I'm like, it's like your basement right now. I got to buy some stuff, so.
Yeah. Don't remind me. Now, another question, another backer, John Zancanaro.
Up in Milwaukee.
Brewers, John.
Blackhawks, John, because we talk a lot about the Blackhawks, so we won't talk about the Brewers.
I respect the Brewers. Yeah. So he said, what is your craziest Star Wars related experience? Mine, I haven't really talked about that much on the show. Me and John Duffy went to a Black Women's Expo. We were the only white guys there. And we're looking for Billy D. Williams.
There are 2 rules to remember if you want to have a good time. Rule number 1, never run out of Colt 45.
Of course, they're pouring like all these exotic liquor samples. Me and John had a nice buzz on us.
Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1.
Well, we found out that Billy D. Williams was not there on that day. He was there the day before. And of course, meeting Mark Hamill. I was with Duffy. We drove up to Milwaukee. Speaking about John from Milwaukee, Walking Across Egypt was a movie that Mark Hamill was in. I never even saw it. I was at the red carpet event. And the filmmaker taps on my shoulder and he's like, you want to meet Mark Hamill? Because I had a backpack and 2 lightsabers sticking out. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, man. Can I get a photo with you? I want to make this guy feel special, right? So I took a photo with the director. He took us in this back hallway of a movie theater. We had a one-on-one with Mark Hamill for like half an hour. And then to tie that, me and John Duffy went to London and we stood in the rain at Ian McDermott's rehearsal space. And we waited for 2 hours to get his autograph. I asked him if he could join us for a cup of tea. He looked at his watch. I don't have time for that, boys, was his reply. And then John Duffy goes, how about an autograph? And he signed our photos. Anybody else have a crazy Star Wars related experience?
It's not too crazy, but it hurt me personally, I think. I went to a Sox doubleheader game, and I was there with some people I hadn't met, some people I knew for years, and I got slammed. Doubleheader, I'm drinking all day. And these people were like, hey, we're going to go out to this bar. I think the bar's around the corner. The bar is in Oak Lawn. It's a suburb of Chicago. It's probably, 20, 30 minutes away. So we're
I went to auto mechanic
in Oak Lawn.
I went to Lincoln Tech Automotive. I graduated from there in '94, so I definitely know where Oak Lawn's right outside of Midway.
So we're bar hopping in Oak Lawn, and I see this guy across the bar with the Star Wars shirt. And I'm like, Star Wars fan. Let me go. I just want to go talk to him. See, you wore Star Wars shirt out to a bar on a Saturday night. You're a fan of some sort. So I just went up to him and I was like, hey man, what do you think of the new sequel, the sequel trilogy? And he was like, oh, I fucking hate it. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, that's an opinion. And then I was like, well, what do you think of the prequel trilogy? He's like, I fucking hate it, man. I hate everything except the original trilogy. And I was just like, oh, okay. I sort of wanted to have a conversation with this dude, but because he was just like so anti anything that was the original, I was like, all right. I was like, all right, well, have a good night. Hope the rest of the Star Wars is good for you. But
if you're going out and you're like wearing it proud, wearing it loud on your shirt or a hat or something, and someone approaches you, don't be an asshole. Like, they're not trying to like attack you if they're saying, hey, I like Star Wars. I noticed you do too. Did you like XYZ? And they'd be like, no, I fucking hated it. It's like, all right, well, maybe don't wear the shirt anymore then if you don't want people to come up to you. Like, more and more you're gonna have people come up. I wonder if it was a little kid going up to him. If they're like, Mister, do you like Poe? And he's like, I fucking hate Poe. I would say though, my crazy story, proof that my dad does do stuff with me, we went to the premiere of Casino Royale in London. On the first night, they had a big welcome party on this like boat that was permanently welded to the river. And then this dude's walking in, and I say to my dad, I'm like, hey, look at that guy, look how tall he is. And we look over and there's like this old tall dude walking in, and it turns out to be Christopher Lee. And the only real rule was he's not there for like photos and autographs, so don't treat it like you're at a convention. He's just there to hang with you. He had his heavy metal album coming out, and he was giving everyone a signed copy. He was supposed to be there for 30 minutes. He ended up being there for like 2 hours. I got to talk to him very briefly just because, he was more in the storyteller mood than, little conversations with people. And I said to him that I asked him what it was like to work with George Lucas and Peter Jackson and to be part of like two big franchises like that at this point in his career. And he was like, oh, my boy, it was wonderful. I enjoyed it. He was like, Peter and George, they were wonderful to work with. I enjoyed it. It was great. Wonderful films, and I was like, great. There were no photos of him, but when I was like, hey, Dad, take a picture of me standing over by the bar. And my dad's like, okay. And I'm like, I'll lean against this chair that's near Christopher Lee. And then my dad's like, snap. So it was like Christopher Lee was signing autographs. I was standing next to him, but we were not posing together. And I will say he hates squirrels. I learned that. And he always wished that he was a singer rather than an actor, is what he was telling us that night.
Well, that's because his new album just came out.
Exactly.
I don't really like Star Wars that much.
That's his strange story.
I've got two. One's personal, one is just a weird coincidence that was sort of like a happenstance thing. Last year at Celebration on the Saturday, my friend Jack and his wife and daughter were there for the day, and I was walking around with them, and we went back to the back corner where the food vendors are. Wife Jen took the daughter to the bathroom, and Jack's like, well, I'm gonna go too. So I just walked with him for some reason. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait here for you. So I'm sitting there literally waiting at the end of the hall near the convention floor for the bathroom, and I turn and look, and like 5 feet away from me, Hayden Christensen is just standing there. So I looked, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he just goes, man, I could really go for a cigarette, but I quit smoking. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, you having fun? And yeah, this was a lot bigger than I thought or remembered it would be. I forgot exactly what I said, but we just basically bullshitted for about 45 seconds, and then he's like, okay, I guess they're calling me in there. It was one of those situations where I wasn't going to ask him for a picture or an autograph because people were spending literally like $200 for a picture and an autograph with them. And my buddy Jack comes walking out, and he looks and he goes, "Who is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Hayden Christensen." He's like, "Really?" And then I'm like, "Just don't yell or anything. He's going to do what he came here for." So it was just a happenstance, little like, cool moment. My other one I had was the summer of '77. I didn't go see Star Wars until my birthday, which is November. For some reason, my dad didn't want to take a 3.5-year-old to the movie theater. But that whole summer, my older brother saw it. He was 6. So that whole summer, we played Star Wars. And I knew in my mind, he told me the whole story about what was going on. And back then, we had those yellow wiffle ball bats that everyone had. And then there was black wiffle ball bats. So the black one was Darth Vader, and the yellow one was Luke Skywalker, which then I find out later that Luke Skywalker didn't fight Darth Vader in the movie anyway, but he was telling me the whole story. And so he would tell me about stuff, and then we'd go by my grandparents' house in Michigan, and there was sand, and he's like, "Oh, this is the sand where the sand happens," and then the droid comes and he starts shooting everybody up. And so I had this whole mind of the story. And then when I finally did see it, it was like, wow, this was like a million times better than Jamie told me it was, even though he told me the story about it. So I knew everything about it. And I did have like how Jimmy's first moment was for his first recollection of it was I had a whole bunch of those Wonder cards that you got, the Wonder Bread cards. And so you live vicariously. I'm like, these are cool. I have no idea what the context is. And at that time, I'm 4 years old. So I don't even know if I knew how to read at 4 years old. But it was like, this is such an awesome thing. And then, 43 years later, we're still talking about it. So must have had some kind of lasting imprint.
Star Wars Celebration was supposed to happen. The Star Wars convention. We're not getting that. We're just getting bombarded with politics left and right. I'm very disappointed that Star Wars Celebration is not happening, but a little relieved because I felt like a year later was too soon. What was your first Star Wars Celebration?
My first celebration was Chicago. I would have gone earlier, but I didn't have, I was in college, didn't have any funds. Or I was a child, and my parents didn't care about it. So they had these vending machines at the Chicago one where you like went up and you could buy merch so you didn't have to stand in line for the store. There was like a Chewbacca pin with a lanyard or something. And this 501st dude went up and he like tries to buy the Chewbacca pin, some other crap. He gets his other crap. He doesn't get the Chewbacca pin. It says it's sold out. And I went up and I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to hit the Chewbacca pin, see if I can get it. Because I know it's just some dude behind there just like feeding the machine. It's not like a real machine. And I ended up getting 2. I got one for free and I gave it to Brian.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Right outside of Reggie's.
I know, I got it.
Tyler, now you had first met me and Brian for the first time at Celebration Chicago. Is it the first time you met Barry as well?
No, I think we might have met, I think all of us might have met maybe like a week before.
I remember inviting Brian to crash because at the RFR Bash, I was hanging out with you, Tyler, and Brian, and I told Brian, it was getting late, and I'm like, Brian, it's fucking 3 a.m. I'm like, just crash in my hotel room. No, I'm gonna go back.
The Thursday night at Reggie's, I go in there with Tyler because we met up outside, and we got there pretty early because we got a pretty good seat right at the end of that table, and there was probably only 15 people in there. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking to Tyler, and all of a sudden, over to the left of the stage, I hear this really gravelly voice talking to someone. I'm like, okay, I got to go see Chris because you and I had been talking and corresponding with each other for like 10 years. And every time it was almost like a misconnections type thing because every time we planned on hooking up, going somewhere, something fell through. So that was the first time I actually got to physically meet you. But then we talked the whole night and it felt like we had been, good friends for 15 years.
Well, I remember when you went up to me too. You're like, "Hey, I'm Brian. I just want to say hello." I'm like, "Whoa! We just can't say hello." I'm like, "Let's fucking have a conversation."
Yeah, you came and sat with us, and we talked the whole night. And
I was there too.
Yeah, you were I think were you next to Tyler, or you were down?
I was with you guys. I was right there at the end of the table. I was just not talking too much. That was it.
So Thursday night we had the RFR Bash at Reggie's. And then Saturday night, we had the RFR Bash at Alulu Brewery. It was a great time. didn't buy a single drink that whole night because Tyler kept buying me drinks, and I was, by the end of the night, I was just blitzed. I was just sitting, I was kind of freaking out going, what am I going to do? I can't get home. I don't know anyone really here. And for some miraculous, the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I just sobered up really quickly.
We stopped drinking at like midnight, and we didn't leave until like 3 or 4.
You guys stopped drinking at midnight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once we all went outside, I don't know if there were any beverages. I can't remember. There were certainly cigars, but I drove some dude from, he worked for Disney. I drove him to
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. I didn't drive anyone home. That's how blitzed I was. No, I was fine when I drove.
Who drove Glenn? Was that Barry?
That was me. Yeah. He was very drunk.
I put Glenn up in my hotel room. Okay. So you drove Glenn to my hotel. I was so hungry at that event that Jimmy had, and I was drinking. I was a little nervous because I was going to go up on stage. It was excitement and nerves. He brings me up at the very, very end. The very end, I'm shit-faced.
In a lot of ways, we're going to kind of wrap up here tonight. I don't really know anybody with more passion about what he does than our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, our dear friend, Cris Macht.
Got there early with Glenn, started drinking, got hungry. I was talking to you. I was wrapped up in the moment of conversation. I'm like, I don't want to have like a meal in front of me when I got to go up on stage. So I kept putting off my dinner. And by the time I got out of there, I did last call like twice. I woke up in the morning. I could not go to Star Wars Celebration because I was hungover, and I never, ever had to do that out of all the Star Wars celebrations I went to.
Chicago was just like, it was amazing just because it was so convenient. And I know it's never going to be like that again. During the last 10 minutes of the Alulu show, my wife is texting me, and our daughter, who was having one of those nights where she was not going down. So I was like, are you serious? I need to leave like in the last 5 minutes of the show. I don't even get to hang out. I was so pissed off. But I drove home. As soon as I got home, opened the door, the house is quiet. And I'm like, and I go in and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, she fell asleep like 5 minutes ago and I'm sleeping. And I'm like, I'm leaving. And so I just left and came right back to the event. I wasn't mad or anything. It was just like, do you need me here? No? Okay, I'm going back to the event.
You drove back to the suburbs and then you drove back to Chicago?
Yeah, because I wanted to go back to the event. And it was maybe
Pilsen
like
to your house is what, about 20 minutes?
Yeah, it was like 15, 20 minutes. But
Pilsen.
Yeah, so I came back in and everyone was wasted and like watching YouTube clips on the big screen.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Jimmy came up to me and he thought I never left. He was like, oh, hey, like he just, like I was in the corner and he just didn't notice me the whole time. And Jimmy was like trying to punch me in the stomach. Do you remember? Does anyone remember that? He was like trying to punch people for some reason. He was like, Barry, and I'm like, why are you? Hey, Jimmy, how's it going?
He did slap me on the back, I think, that night.
Yeah.
And a good move that night.
And so that was like worse just because it was so frustrating to like have to drive there and back. But it worked out. I think best moment for me was on the last day. I brought my daughter with me, and I'm amazed by how lenient they are with kids. And, we just rolled in there. The stroller gave me like so much leeway with things. Like people would let me pass and I would like get to use the accessible areas kind of. But she had a great time. I had her dressed up in a Rebel Pilot outfit. That was a Halloween outfit I got her. And people thought she was a boy because she just had long blonde hair and kind of looked like Luke. But whatever, I didn't correct them. I'm like, she's wearing pink shoes, but I guess boys can. We went to the Phantom Menace panel and she was, like you get in there an hour and a half beforehand, and she was being so good for like the first hour and a half leading up to it and the first like 30 minutes of the event. And then she just like lost it and started crawling around, crying. And all of these like dorks were giving me faces like, oh, who brings a kid in here? And I'm like you'll ever have a kid, like leave me alone. Like I'm like, please. But there were some.
Celebration is for kids.
And it was great too, because it was the first time my daughter saw anything on the big screen was the Phantom Menace trailer. You know, like that was her first movie.
Yeah.
And she loved it because people would clap, and she'd like look around and just start clapping every time people would clap.
Now, unlike you, I chose not to bring my daughter because my daughter is very wishy-washy about Star Wars. Like sometimes she shows interest and sometimes she's like, yeah, you know, that's your thing. Why does it always have to be Star Wars? Why do you like Star Wars so much, Dad? And I didn't want to take the chance bringing her down to experience it. But, and I know you said, you know, next time it's not going to be that convenient, but I tell you, man, when you travel for Celebration, if you get a chance to bring your wife and your daughter and your family, it's a family vacation. You know, it's more than just a convention at this point, you know, so it's definitely something to look forward to. My first celebration was Star Wars Celebration 1, getting ready for that, just knowing that there was a Star Wars convention that I had to get on a plane for in Denver. And I already loved travel. So the element of excitement was already there because I was getting on a plane. And the fact that I was traveling for Star Wars, I'm like, man, this is really, really cool. Now, you guys have heard the word about and the stories about how Celebration 1 was
shitty,
a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
Shitty, muddy, whatever. But for me, one of the coolest moments was when Ahmed Best jammed with his band. They called it the Jar Jar Jam. He was in a jazz band in New York.
Forms of the rhythm as they flowing through the air, flowing decibel by decibel, flowing with no despair. Follow the trail of the leader as we show you the right way to move back and forth and back, cause we want to as a group. And
they did not play at the Jar Jar Jam. It was just other musicians. And as a musician and a freak of music, knowing that this new Jar Jar character was going to be jamming at a concert, I was like, oh, this is so fucking cool. And the celebrities were there, and Ray Park introduced them. I got a picture with Pernilla August there. She never made another convention appearance at all. That was probably my favorite moment now, after all the smoke is cleared from Star Wars Celebration. That was one of my top moments ever. That was, Celebration 1 was cool. Very grassroots, but very, very cool. Barry, you asked a question as a Kickstarter supporter, and you're probably going to be one of the few that's going to be on the show that is going to hear the answer being answered directly to you. So you asked the top 3 favorite things about my least favorite Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Which I think is a brilliant question, because it really makes you think. It's like, okay, your least favorite Star Wars film? Give me the 3 positive things about it. You know what? My least favorite Star Wars film is Solo, and I don't think I can name 3 good things about that film.
Wow.
So I'm going to stick to Attack of the Clones. Because Attack of the Clones, it might be a least favorite film, but there were some really, really great moments in Attack of the Clones. The music, one. Except the electric guitar that John Williams added into the chase scene.
I love that.
The little slide. You hear the...
But the first time you hear it, it almost sounds like it's like just random notes being played, and they weren't even like it was just like it was like, holy crap, it's like some kind of avant-garde stuff.
Yeah.
I will say one of the things that I loved about Attack of the Clones was the locations. Italy was beautiful. Going back to Tatooine again, because they already went there in episode 1, but to see the actual homestead, to see the Tuscans, I don't know what you call it, Luke's garage recreated. And I love that moment when Watto comes out, you know, and he goes, Henny, is that you? And I'm like, wow, this is making episode 1 nostalgic at this point.
Right.
I just thought all those moments and all those elements of the location were amazing. And last but not least, the casting. Jimmy Smits, aside from Ewan McGregor and Sam Jackson and Rose Byrne, everybody knows that Rose Byrne is my hall pass. The casting in that was brilliant. Now maybe the acting was a little stiff, but the actors made it. They took what they had.
I think that was more due to the dialogue, to the script, than the acting.
The dialogue, yes, the dialogue than the script, yes, for sure. You know, I got it. Going back, you know, Obi-Wan walks into the training room with the kids, and it's like the music playing there, and the fact that there's this planet that's not, you know, on the map, you know, so there's like this mystery element, and that was kind of the first and only. I would say Episode 2 was like the most mysterious Star Wars movie. There were a lot of unknowns, and they were always looking for things, you know?
Even Joe Castaneda told him to fuck off. She was like...
She said that, too, I remember.
She was like, it's not in the library, fuck off.
I hate to say it, but it looks like the system you're searching for doesn't exist.
And then Obi-Wan goes to Camino, and they're like Master Sifo-Dyas, and that whole thing's a mystery. I don't know. You know what? Actually, having this conversation about Episode 2, it's not my least favorite movie. Solo is. On the Babu Freaks, you guys like to talk about what's new for Star Wars this week. What are you guys doing this week with Star Wars?
I bought a Tanty 4 playset today.
It's actually cool because it's two-sided, because if you get two of them, you can put them together this way, and it's the hull, like where Darth Vader comes down to choke people. And then if you put the other side together, it's the area where Leia programmed or like put the code into R2-D2 with the, you know, Obi-Wan could, you're our only hope thing. So it looks like that. So it's modular.
I'm going to add that to my what's new in Star Wars for me this week list.
Yeah.
I got time tomorrow morning with my daughter. My wife's going to be doing something. So with everything going on, I'm not going to be going out too much, but we're at the very least going to make like a Target run. It's always fun to do. She said, Daddy, do you need Star Wars supplies? Because she likes going to the arts and crafts store and getting art supplies. So she thinks, well, if I'm getting art supplies, then Daddy's getting Star Wars supplies.
When you bring your daughter, can you get out of Target without buying anything for her?
She likes snacks. So like a box of fruit snacks might happen, but she's not one to be like, I want toys, I want this, I want that.
My daughter is 6, and she has a bigger obsession for toys than I do. Like when I go to Target, I'm like, no, you're not coming with. She'll want to buy every freaking toy in that joint. She thinks Target is like the new Toys R Us. And I'm like, no, you can't just buy toys. These guys are not going out of business. I'm not just going to buy everything on the shelf. Brian, how about you, man?
I've been rewatching Rebels for a bit. So I'll catch a couple episodes here and there. But I did get today the Funko, and it's got the child and Din. So I mean, this is added. I kind of like the Funko stuff. So this thing actually is like a street date until September or something.
Did anybody switch drinks before during this chat?
No.
I went to water because I didn't want to run and grab another beer.
I was tempted to grab another beer. I have a bunch of beer from Colorado, so I'll disperse.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
I was gonna say because my video is everyone is frozen.
Your video cut out. Yeah.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
I went from the old fashioned and I switched to a bourbon barrel red blend. This is red wine.
It's red wine aged in a bourbon barrel?
Aged in bourbon barrel, yes.
Wow.
Yes. Very, very, very good. Well, hey, I want to thank you guys so much for not only contributing to the show, but adding to the show. Tyler Page, Brian Klein, Barry Harmon, thank you guys so much for being a part of the adventure, man. Really appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for Tyler for donating enough to get us on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything for the freaks, anything for Chris. So,
hey, those are the friends I want to have, man. Those are the friends I want to have. So, hey, guys, again, thank you for your support, and I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight on Machtails from the Cantina, and we will see you next time on Machtails from the Cantina. Wash your hands, stay smart, stay safe, And don't forget to vote.
Be excellent to each other.
You can take Star Wars with you. It goes wherever you go.